countdown, jubilation as the Rosetta mission is a success. Landing on a comet traveling 34,000 miles per hour towards the sun. That's the stuff dreams are made of. Well, we got Freeway Ricky Ross, the biggest coke dealer probably in U.S. history, ever, quote, busted, joining us to blow the history of CIA drug trafficking wide open. Of course, the big movie, Kill the Messenger. Guys, give me the IMDb printout on that, please. Also portrays Ross in it, and he's here with us in Austin, Texas, before he goes to speak to some college students up in Dallas. And we're going to be, I've been talking to him since he was in prison. He's been in prison 25 years. But he's going to be in studio with us. I haven't even met him yet. He came in last night. He's been out with the crew. He just arrived, and so he'll be in studio with us coming up in the next segment. Well, breaking, the U.S. and China just announced a huge deal on climate. You mean a huge tax deal like Obamacare? Or the plan to take over the internet and tax it and regulate it, to protect it? Obamacare for the internet? A huge, he's getting ready on the internet, on carbon taxes, on your guns, with the UN treaty he says he'll honor that goes in December 24th, a little Christmas present. Wide open borders, going after your guns, going after your energy prices, going after you with carbon taxes, going after you, going after you, going after you, going after fast track to sign over sovereignty, Republican leadership involved in that. The U.S. and China just announced a huge deal on climate, yeah. And it's a game changer, Mother Jones reports. Oh, yes. The surprise agreement, you mean the sneak attack, aims to double the price of carbon pollution reduction in the United States only. What a great deal. You make it harder to work and have factories here and force it over to China that always signs on but doesn't comply. Dirty coal power plants, 3 being built a week. We have more than 3 being shut down a week, clean ones. What a thank you, Obama. Wow, our electricity already costs 5 times what it does in China. And so no wonder no one wants to build. Thank you, yeah. Let's make it 10 times. Oh, man, Obama, what a great deal. Make our energy 10 times more expensive than Chinese coal power energy. And the average American goes, I don't own coal stocks. I don't have a coal stove. All you electric car people with your Volts and all of you that are like, look at that gasoline guzzling truck. Oh, my gosh. Oh, and you got your electric lawnmowers. It comes from coal. Coal, coal, coal. Coal, coal, coal. I mean, this is like a bandit blowing the race car engine before the race. Obama's driving the Chinese race car, and he comes over and, like, throws a hand grenade in the engine. And we go, oh, thank you. The engine, boom, blows up. Oh, it's such a good... He's like, wait, the engine didn't totally blow? Throw an Obamacare hand grenade in there. Ha, ha, ha. Ah, bring in 60 million illegals to bankrupt things. Another hand grenade. The thing is, the country was so rich and so powerful, they just can't blow the engine. Ha, 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 ha. Ah, ha, you filth. And we've got 60 million people refusing to pay the income tax, keeping the economy going. It's meant to shut it off. Oh, you filth, you trash, you scum. I mean, this country's under total attack. In a surprise announcement last night, the world's 2 biggest economies in greenhouse gas emitters, the United States and China, said they will partner closely on broad-ranging package of plans to fight climate change, including new targets to reduce carbon pollution, according to a statement from the White House. But it's going to start out with doubling the price in the U.S. because we're the leader in that. And look at Obama smiling. Can you imagine? Oh, because they don't just cut the power off. They then charge you more for it. Coming up in the 3rd hour, we're going to open the phones up for listeners. Your chance to talk to Freeway Ricky Ross. And, of course, Rick Ross I've been recognized as a major pawn of the CIA drug war game. He was a pioneer in the crack cocaine trade in Los Angeles. Ross harvested millions of dollars a day as an unknown participant of the CIA and U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency ops. And then long after he got out of it, they still set him up and sent him to prison. And here's my issue. It's the government that made narcotics illegal when prohibition ended of alcohol because they needed another business to skim off of. That's on record. They've been shipping the narcotics into this country since they made them illegal. You could buy cocaine, heroin, speed, anything under different names at the drugstore. You would go and get coke syrup, cocaine syrup, shot into your, quote, tonic. That's where soft drinks came from. I know I had family that, basically worked in that business up in Waco, where Dr. Pepper comes from. It had cocaine in it, too. In fact, one of my ancestors actually named Dr. Pepper. The point is, doctor will pep you up. So this guy's been a Dr. Pepper as well. You make it illegal, though, it brings all the prostitution, it brings all the money laundering, it brings all the exploitation into it and makes it dirty. And how are you going to legalize slavery again in this country? How are you going to scoop up 3, 4, 5 million people and throw them in jail every year and take their rights away? You do it by putting something highly addictive. Beer's addictive. We're going to lock them up for that. Fast food's addictive. Going to lock you up for that. They throw it out, hope people pick up the adulterated poison filled with all sorts of toxic garbage, and then when they catch you on it or catch you selling it to support your habit, you're going to be thrown under the jail. And then the prisons are broken up into racial gangs, the black gangs, the white gangs, the Hispanic gangs, the Asian gangs, just like they're breaking up the rest of our society. This is a social engineering program on record. And Rick Ross could have shut up about the CIA. He could have gone along. They wouldn't have given him a life sentence. I remember interviewing Gary Webb. He's got the big Renner film out right now. Of course, Kill the Messenger, dealing with it. And I remember talking to Webb. He was going to come on in a few months. And he gave me a disc with all his documents. And he was going to have a new book coming out to vindicate everything he'd done, everything he'd said. He'd won all sorts of prizes, you name it. But his editors and the LA Times, run by the CIA, that was declassified 2 months ago. The CIA did target him with a disinformation campaign. They did lie and say he was discredited. He would never admit he was discredited because it wasn't true. And before he could vindicate himself, they killed him. Now, why would the CIA declassify that a month before the film came out 2 months ago? Why would they do something like that? Well, I'm going to ask Rick Ross that question, but I really think it's because it's already so well known. It's even on Fox News that our troops grow the opium and load it on C-130s, and then it comes here, and then it goes through people like Ross that are intermediaries. It goes CIA to the Black Front because it's the black man bringing us the drugs. He's the bad guy, not the CIA. Not the establishment. It's the Tony Montana type. It's the Cuban. He's behind it. It's the black guy, or it's the white trash guy in the trailer selling the drugs. No, it's not. And then as the economy shuts down, more and more people want the drugs. Your daughter gets hooked on them. Now she's a topless dancer. Then she's a hooker. This is how you bring down society. And then you got SWAT teams running around paramilitary for the war on drugs. You got the Patriot Act they're using for the war on drugs, merging it all together so everyone's under suspicion. Your daughter hurts her back in a volleyball accident. One of my friends when she's 16. 2 years later is addicted to pain pills. Goes around doctor shopping to get the things. Instead of getting treatment, they throw her in jail. Then she gets in with bad people. Next, she comes out with an education in criminal activity after a year and becomes, you guessed it, a streetwalker. This is how you kill a civilization. This is how you annihilate a culture. This is how you bring a country down. So a minority of people in the YouTube comments and on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com said, what are you doing having a huge cocaine dealer on your show? Okay, what are you doing putting up with a government that went and hired him? See, there's no outrage about that. There's no outrage about the big banks laundering $386 billion in 2 years, Bloomberg reported, 2 banks alone. Wells Fargo, Wachovia, $380+ billion. Type it in. Big banks laundered $300+ billion. It'll pop up Bloomberg, AP, you name it, from 4 years ago. That's just one admission. They paid a $111 million fine. That's like if you rob a bank for $1 million, paying a $3,000 fine. It's a slap on the wrist. It's not a slap on the wrist. It's like them flicking a penny after they rob the bank, the cops. You walk out, the cops open the truck up, help you load the stolen money, and you throw them a quarter. That's what this is. That's how this system works. And now it's expanding the racket with all the psych testing in the schools and the drugging of the kids that way to get them into the system. I am the real RickRoss.com, FreewayRick.com, Freeway Rick Ross. And I'm not going to go over his whole bio, but in '96, he hadn't dealt drugs in years. They were getting rid of everybody. See, they always flush the people that work for him. He was sentenced to life imprisonment after being convicted of trying to purchase more than 100 kilograms of cocaine from a federal agent. Ross became the subject of a controversy later that year when a series of articles by journalist Gary Webb in the San Jose Mercury brought to light the connection between one of Ross's cocaine sources and the CIA as part of the Iran-Contra scandal. His sentencing was later reduced to less than 20 years and released in September 2009. He's finally off the probation, the harassment, all of it, able to put his book out that's excellent. We're selling it at InfoWarsStore.com. Even if you already know all this, give this to friends and family. He is currently in the process of creating a feature-length film for his life story, Cracking the System, and creating his autobiographical book, which is now out. And that is Freeway Rick Ross, The Untold Autobiography by Rick Ross with Kathy Scott. Available right now at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139. I admire Rick Ross because I talked to Gary Webb about it. When this came out about the CIA and his trial, he didn't really know about it. He was blown away. Everything suddenly made sense. They said, just shut up, don't cooperate with this reporter and people, and we'll go easy. He didn't, so they gave him life in prison. That was clearly done politically, so it was reduced. But it doesn't matter. The issue is he's repented of it. The CIA and the New World Order haven't. So he joins us now until the end of the transmission, the next hour and 45 minutes. We'll open the phones up for Rick Ross next hour. But, Rick, it was like sunny and 80 degrees a few days ago. Sorry you got to be in Austin when this global warming cold front hits, but thank you so much for coming.
No, I'm just blown away to be here. I remember when I was in prison and you tried to come down to see me and make sure that I was okay. And it was one of my dreams to sit here with you in the studio. And here I am today. And I'm just blown away, man. And thanks for still having me here.
Oh, it's awesome to have you. And you're speaking to college students all over the country. You're speaking to the Black Congressional Congress Press Club. You're at the premiere with Renner of the film. I mean, you're having a big effect now. And that is so exciting that you can really educate people, because back when this all first came out, people didn't believe the CIA was bringing drugs in.
I didn't believe it. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Even when Gary reported the story and I was like, oh, this guy Gary, what is he talking about? I was involved with the CIA and no way. It wasn't until the CIA themselves told me that they were involved and put out their report. I mean, that was when it really hit me that, hey, Gary was right, because, I mean, it was just hard for me to believe. How can a little guy like me who wasn't supposed to succeed, couldn't read, couldn't write, high school dropout, I mean, how could I, be involved with something this big? I mean, it was just like totally shocking to me. I'll be honest with you.
Let's start at the beginning. And in the few minutes we have before break, start at the beginning of your life, get into how you got into drug dealing, how you suddenly found this incredible source that made you the biggest dealer on the West Coast, and then we'll lead right through your trial, prison, the drug war, and phone calls.
All right, let's do that. Well, I was born here in Texas, Tyler. My mom decided that she wanted to try Los Angeles, give us an opportunity to have more than what she had. She was a maid here in Tyler, so she moved to L.A. I moved in during the Watts riot. Right when the riots broke out, I got to see the Black Panthers, and I used to want to be a Panther. So I go to school and, trying to be like any other normal kid, want to be a police officer, a firefighter, or airplane pilot. Started playing tennis in high school, did pretty good, made All-City, was offered scholarships, but I couldn't read or write. So when it was time to take the scholarships, I couldn't go to college. So I found myself with the one thing that I thought that I could count on was my tennis to get me out the ghetto. And I found that was no longer an option for me. So I found myself back in the streets in South Central Los Angeles. So I'm walking around trying to figure out, what was I going to do with myself, and couldn't get a job, even though I was a very hard worker. Had no problem, rolling up my sleeves and doing whatever, car washing, taking out trash, any number of things. Just anything that I could do to start making a living, I was willing to do it. Well, one of my friends came from college, and he had this stuff called cocaine.
Stay right there. We're going to come back there and start with your friend from college coming back. Freeway Rick Ross is our guest, the Untold Autobiography. You're getting the big exclusive inside the CIA drug dealing operations of the crack cocaine epidemic. Straight ahead, I'm Alex Jones. Rick Ross, Freeway Rick Ross, became the biggest cocaine dealer on the West Coast on record and became the heart of an investigation that later the CIA Inspector General had to admit that the CIA was involved bringing in the majority of the cocaine, at least the West Coast. It's much bigger than that. Mena, Arkansas, I've interviewed the pilots that were there unloading the cocaine, not just Tosh Plumley, who's on record Iran-Contra testimony, but just so many others that were there and saw governors, saw vice presidents who would be there personally offloading aircraft with the cocaine. I mean, that's what, and then, I mean, if local kids saw it, they'd kill them. Remember Mena, Arkansas and all that? And then if cops talked about that, they'd kill the cops. I mean, a lot of people have died over this information. I hope you understand this. And everybody today is like, yeah, we know they bring it in. Well, wait, we didn't know this back in the 90s. There'd been the heroin coming in out of Southeast Asia, but they'd blame a colonel or somebody. This is organized. All right, this is a short segment. I want to go back to you, Rick Ross. It's great to have you here, my friend. I appreciate your courage and you not selling out and getting that longer sentence, for not backing down. But let's get into now where you left off. You can't get a job, that pays well. You don't have a criminal record. You could have got a scholarship, but you couldn't read and write for tennis. And then your friend comes back from college.
Yeah, so he introduces me to cocaine for the first time. But what I also noticed, Alex, when I was in prison, I did a lot of thinking back. And I can remember before I started selling cocaine, they started coming out with movies like Superfly and almost like priming you up for this lifestyle that you're about to get into. So when my friend comes and shows me cocaine, I'm interested because I saw Superfly.
What you hit is key. The CIA's now declassified that. Rock and roll, the drug culture. The CIA delivered the first suitcases of LSD. White kids weren't smoking marijuana. They delivered it. I mean, it's incredible. They primed the whole deal.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like they get your mind ready so that when you get the opportunity that you're interested in.
It's called predictive programming. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It's just what you're saying is absolutely right.
So when my friend comes and he shows me this stuff, never seen it before. It was yellowish white. And I'm like, well, I thought cocaine was supposed to be white. He's like, no, man, this is it. So he introduces it to me. He gives me a little bit, like $50 worth. He said, go and see what you can do with it. So I go around the neighborhood and I'm asking everybody. Nobody knows what it is. I mean, I'm going all over South Central LA. Finally, I run into a guy. He was a pimp. And he says, let me see it. And he takes it and he cooks it up. And he says, oh, yeah, it's pretty good stuff. And that's how I got started selling cocaine. And it went from there to this one person would buy from me, and then another one would come, and he would introduce me to somebody else until some days I'm making $3 million a day.
So you got in on the ground floor of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally ground. Was totally a novice. I had never smoked pot. At that time, I was still tinkering on being a tennis player, like, I don't know if you're going to make it in tennis, but you got to do something. My mom's on my back right now because I'm living with my mom. I'm not bringing in any income, and she's really going hard on me. You're a bum. You're not going to be doing nothing with your life. So I desperately want to do something now. I need to make some money somewhere. So when this opportunity came, I thought that it was a blessing from God. I started off just helping Mike, who was my friend. I'd make the money for him, give him all the money, and pretty soon I know the business. It goes from there, from making $50 a week to, like I said, $3 million a day sometimes.
In fact, I was reading sometimes you were bringing in $30 million a deal every few days.
Well, yeah. If you add up 10 days, you do 10 days worth of dealing, you're talking about $10 million or more. No, like $30 million.
And this is 1980s money.
Yeah, 80s money. 84-ish, 85, 86.
So you were there when folks didn't even know what cocaine was.
In my community, nobody knew what cocaine was.
Yeah, it was a rich white guy drug.
Well, that's how I felt. I felt that when I first started selling cocaine, I felt that it was another, because I've been discriminated against. I've been to a hospital and they said, oh, no, you can't sit right there because this is a white-only section. You have to go to the back. So when I started selling cocaine, that's how I felt about cocaine. That it was another one of those things that they said, no, this is for white people and you guys can't have it. So I felt like I was bringing cocaine to my community to give us something.
But the CIA said, oh, you blacks want it? We're going to make something special for you. Here's how you make crack.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Makes it hit harder, be more addictive, turn people into zombies.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened. Exactly how it turned out.
Unbelievable. We're going to break it all down. 18-minute segment coming up. You're going to get the floor. Get ready to roll. Just go through it all. Rick Ross is our guest. Ground level of the CIA crack cocaine epidemic. And then all of a sudden, years after he's out of it, they want to get rid of all the loose ends. They're trying to throw him in jail. Turns out all the people involved, they all knew what was going on. The CIA came to visit him, said, shut your mouth. We are back live, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Rick Ross with us for the entire third hour coming up. About 20 minutes into that hour, I'm going to open the phones up for your questions for Freeway Rick Ross. And he is here with us. We are selling his amazing untold story autobiography. It is available at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. And you need to give this to young people, you know. You need to give this to police officers, you know. You need to give this to preachers, you know. It is so immoral and hypocritical. If the preacher gets up in the pulpit and gives an anti-drug sermon, which I think they should, I mean, drugs, whether they're prescription or illicit, are just super destructive. Everybody knows that. I mean, sure, some opiate pills are fine if your leg's broken, you had surgery, but it just wrecks people's lives. They are making this stuff illegal so they can make money in the black market, no pun intended, and then still put you in prison. This is a social engineering plan. Also, it's part of the social engineering with the GMO and the additives in the food and water. They don't want you getting all natural, healthy things. They don't want you knowing that they've taken the good halogen iodine out of the salt and food and bread and put the bad halogens of bromide, bromide, and fluoride in that just fry your glands. They don't want you to know about Survival Shield X2, Nason Iodine. We're the only company that has the deep earth crystal source. All the rest is a seaweed source, which is still great. Sea salt's great if it's all you can get, or the seaweed-based stuff. That's what I first got on and changed my life, helped me lose a bunch of weight and get healthier. But, man, when I got on the crystal source, X2, Group had been trying to get a source of this for years, Dr. Group, and then finally a couple of years ago had it and took him years to get it together. And, I mean, you got to jump through DEA hoops, you name it, to get iodine because it's a very powerful substance. The type we use is the crystal source. It turns into purple gas. If you put it on a hot plate, we have video of it. I mean, it's that pure. 200 million year old. Unbelievable what it does in your body. Just get ready for all the oil to come out all the time. Just what it's done for me and my family has been sensational. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. I got some good news and some bad news. It is going to sell out by the end of the week. The good news is it may only take 3 weeks to get more in. So if you want Survival Shield X2 discounted 10%, we're just keeping that discount until it sells out. When you get it with the lung cleanse, it's part of the Biodefense Pack, 10% off. You can also use the promo code NOW and get 5% off all the other products that are already discounted. DNA Force, Oxy Powder, already the lowest price on Oxy Powder, but 5% off promo code now. Super Male Vitality, Super Female Vitality. And again, this doesn't mimic testosterone, the concentrated organic herbs that are in there. It's stuff that's been developed to get your body to release what you're already supposed to have, with all the chemicals and the estrogen mimickers that are really screwing men up particularly. Then the formulations for women to help get them cleaned up. And you've heard the rave reviews. We are self-funding here. I fund this whole operation off books, videos, T-shirts, sponsors. We're not like NPR getting public money. We're not like MSNBC getting stimulus money. Our parent company isn't some weapons manufacturer. This is an operation set up by me, Alex Jones, to try to promote the truth, because the truth will set us free, as Christ said. So Freeway Rick Ross is our guest. FreewayRick.com. You can get his book there as well, or at InfoWarsStore.com. Find the supplements at InfoWarsLife.com, or again, the book at InfoWarsStore.com. And please remember to support our local AM and FM affiliates, whether it's Oklahoma City or I haven't plugged some of these new affiliates. We've got a new one in Chicago on top of our other affiliate. And we've also got Jasper, Texas just turned us on. It's like 5 or 6 new affiliates the last 2 weeks, and I haven't plugged them. They've told me to plug them. If you print those out again, I'll actually mention those on air. But please tell friends and family about the show if you're listening to it. It's a big deal that a show telling the truth like this can be heard. It's all word of mouth. Please support their local sponsors. Please tell them why you're supporting the sponsors, or become a sponsor. If you're a car dealership or a restaurant or a bookstore or a maid service or a hotel, whatever, you better support it. That's why we've gone from being on the weekends to weeknights to prime time on almost every affiliate that picks up our show, is because you have been supporting it. So you're the reason we're reaching more people. Now, Rick Ross, you've got the floor. You've told the story. Biggest cocaine dealer in West Coast history. When it came out in your trial, that the prosecution knew, the government knew, the DEA knew, the CIA knew, that you were one of their main distributors, but you didn't even know. I want to get into that relationship and more. But you'd gotten to the point in a few years to where, tell the story. Did you ever use? Why were you so successful? And then go ahead and walk through everything that happened. And then now what your message is to the youth about what's really going on. And we'll talk about Gary Webb.
Well, I did start using for a short time. I got up to a point to where I probably had about $8,000 or $9,000. I thought I was rich. So, when you're rich, you start experimenting, with the drugs. And I looked up, all my money was gone. So I immediately quit using. I went back and regrouped. I learned that from tennis. When you're doing something wrong, you go back and you figure out what you're doing wrong. So I figured out that I couldn't use anymore. If I wanted to be rich, I had to stop using. So I stopped using, and I went on to get rich. Well, I made a lot of money. Like I said, I made $3 million a day sometimes. And then it got to the point to where I started seeing the effects that cocaine was having inside of my community. And it wasn't the effects that I initially thought that it was going to have. I started seeing people pushing baskets. I started seeing women walking the streets and women doing anything to get high. And I started to rethink my position. That was around 88, 89. At that time, I threw my hands up. I said, you know what? I'm through with the cocaine business. I got enough money. I got more money now than I ever thought that I would have in my life. I got businesses. So I walked away. Well, what happened is the government came back and indicted me for the things that I'd already done. Went to prison. Did 5 years in prison. I got out. Immediately after I got out, they had Danilo Blandon started to call me. And his goal was to get me back inside of drugs, but I didn't want to go back. I was trying to go straight. He hounded me for like 6 months to introduce him to one of my friends. Once I made the introduction, my friend handed him a bag of money, and the cops swooped in, arrested all of us, and they got me for brokering the deal, for making the introduction, saying that I knew that they were going to be doing a drug deal, and for that reason that I aided and abetted the crime. Doing that crime, they gave me a life sentence. While I was sitting in jail doing this life sentence, fighting my case, I was approached by a reporter, Gary Webb. Well, Gary came down and he saw me. He started talking about that I was in something bigger than what I thought I was. But also too, Alex, that there were some cops on my case. They called themselves the Freeway Task Force, and those cops were robbing and stealing, and they let the dog bite me while I was handcuffed. They got indicted as well. So I meet Gary Webb, and he was like, oh, man, this is bigger than what you think it is. I'm thinking that they're talking about the crooked cops. It's like 35, 40 cops that's running around robbing drug dealers, taking their money, and they became drug dealers themselves, really, because they was taking the drugs from one person, planting them on another person, and selling them to this person, and just a criminal enterprise. I mean, the whole war on drugs is just like one big hoax of one person benefiting this one, another one benefiting that way. But at the end of the day, guys like myself get caught in the middle, and I believe that we're the ones who's paying the biggest price. Not necessarily myself, because when I was in prison, I couldn't cry about my time. If they'd have gave me the life sentence, I'd have had to do the rest of my life in prison. I could have accepted that because I knew that what I was doing. I knew I was selling drugs, and I knew that I shouldn't have been selling drugs after a period of time.
That's the key to integrity and sanity, I've learned, is admitting when you've been wrong, admitting and owning up to it. but then there's the giant hypocrisy. They're the ones bringing the drugs in, and they're the ones putting you in jail. That's 1,000 times worse, and they never own up to any of it. In fact, they sit up there like they're God, and they're clean, and they're good. That makes me want to throw up.
Well, that's what really, really started to affect me, when I was in prison. And I'm like, once everything came out and I interviewed with the CIA, the CIA came down to my jail cell.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, but let's also go back to your trial when you learn about all this with Gary Webb. Tell that story, because Webb talked about how you got threatened out in the hall, threatened to kill him and stuff. They didn't just threaten to kill his kids. I mean, the feds themselves that were there, not just the CIA, they were basically all in on it. It's
the
just
DA, they sandbagged us during trial. We go into trial. So we have there's a period in court where you get to interview the informant, because we never talk to the informant. We don't know what the informant's going to say. You don't have no clue about what the person who's going to testify against you going to say. So the court has a thing where they call a pre-trial hearing, where the informant is supposed to come to like a little room. I couldn't be there, but my lawyer was supposed to be there, and Gary was supposed to be there. Well, anyway, Blandon comes to this hearing, and when they get in the room and my lawyer wants to ask him some questions, and the guy said, everything that I got to say, I'm going to say during trial. So we don't know what this guy is going to say. So we start.
You were unable to ever do a deposition.
No deposition with this guy. So when we get to trial, my lawyer don't have a clue what's going on. All the information that Gary has, we don't have this information. And Gary's not giving it to us. He didn't give us this information at first, because Gary knew I had the relationship with LA Times. So I felt that Gary was worried about me leaking his information to Jesse Katz at LA Times, because, me and Jesse Katz still had a relationship where we talk once in a while. So Gary didn't give it to us. We start trial, and in the middle of trial, my lawyer keeps running back and forth to Gary. Gary's in the audience. So he's at the trial table with me, and he gets up from the trial table, and he goes and he talks to Blandon, and then he goes back and he asks Gary, because Gary's feeding him like little bits and pieces.
And that was smart. That way, the LA Times, now admitted, run by the CIA, the editor CIA, trying to cover all this up. You didn't know that. He could only ask it while it was happening live, so he would get the intel, and they couldn't spin it.
Exactly. I mean, he had to do it like that almost, because I may have given it to Jesse, not knowing, because I didn't know the scope of this. Believe me, I had no idea. They tried to say that I told Gary how to put it together. They said that, right?
Yes.
That Rick Ross dreamed this all up and put this together and fed it to Gary and got Gary to buy into it. But I didn't know none of this. They gave me more credit than I deserved.
Who would have thought the LA Times, was involved, That's how it works, though. You're going to take down a culture and bring in and make trillions off drugs. You got to run the newspapers.
Yeah, you have to. You have to. And that's what's so amazing. Even right now today, it baffles me that people don't know this. I'm like, the CIA admitted it. They got a report. You can go to their website, and the report is on their website, and people don't know it.
By their Inspector General. Please continue.
So we in court, and Gary's asking my lawyer this, and then the judge recognized what's going on, and she was like, well, why you keep talking to this reporter? Why are you running back and forth to him in the courtroom? I want you to stand here and do this. We're not on a fishing expedition, because, Gary was asking about certain names, Enrique Bermudez. And then Blandon talks about, well, my boss goes on a fishing trip with George Bush, and when they come back, they say the ends justify the means. And all this type of stuff. But this stuff is still not making sense.
It's all Machiavelli, yeah.
To me, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I mean, I'm learning about the court system while I'm there, but, I'm not a lawyer. I'm still a novice. This is a guy that couldn't read. 2 years ago, I couldn't read. So I'm still learning what's going on. So then eventually we finish trial. They give me the life sentence. And a couple months later, Gary's story come out. Gary sends me a copy. I get a copy the day before it comes out. I call Gary on the phone, and then we start to talk, and he starts to tell me, about the CIA being involved, about the Contras. Because, I really didn't know what the Contras was. I had no clue what the Contras was. Definitely did not know that they were backed by the CIA and Ronald Reagan and George Bush. Had no clue that they was backed by that. I did know that Danilo and these guys and all of his friends were fighting a war in their country. Didn't know what the war was over. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's illiterate still. I'm still illiterate. Had never read a book.
Well, look, this stuff's complex, and you're busy anyways. It's come out Ronald Reagan, not defending him. He didn't know it was George Herbert Walker Bush running all that as well, keeping it from him. So if the president didn't know, Rick, you can't blame you for not knowing.
Yeah, so I'm still a novice to all the stuff that's going on. But when it comes out, Gary runs it down to me. He starts to tell me, and I'm like, oh, this guy, Gary, he's out there. So the next thing I know, a couple of days later, the OIG is at my cell. The CIA is at my cell. Congresswoman Maxine Waters is there. I mean, it just starts to pour. All these people are coming and coming. I'm like, what is going on?
Let's talk about that. What did the CIA say to you when they came to your cell?
Well, they started to talk to me about how much drugs I sold. Who did I get my drugs from? Did I have a contract with the CIA? And I was like, no, I ain't never been with the CIA. I don't know nothing about the CIA.
They know you were compartmentalized. They wanted to act like, well, he refutes the story.
Kind of, yeah. That's what they pretty much said. And did I get drugs from Danilo Blandon? How long had I been getting drugs from him? That kind of stuff. And I was like, well, you guys want me to talk to you. Why you don't straighten my court sentence out? You know, I got a life sentence. Will you straighten my court sentence out? No, we don't have anything to do with that. We're not going to help you with your courts. If you want to talk to us, you just talk to us, and this is how we're going to do it. So that was pretty much that.
By the way, they could have snapped their fingers and got you out in a few years.
Yeah, I already know. But, you know, I wasn't cooperating with what they wanted me to do. So,
well, that's why you're, a hero overall, because more and more you had a chance once it came out that it had been going on to throw Gary Webb under the bus. You wouldn't do it.
Oh no! I respect what Gary does, what he did, and even.
Well, you're right. He's still alive. I mean, he's living on through
through a story. Absolutely, you know, and people, you know, they always picking here and there about every little thing, you know, like even with the movie, you know, oh, well, what you didn't like about the movie? How did you like this? And you know, it's like, hey, it's his spirit that people have to respect. I mean, this guy stood up for justice. He felt that even though I was selling drugs, that I still had rights that had to be respected and that we should be treated.
You shouldn't be in jail when the CIA sold you the drugs. I've had the pilot on that was flying them in to the military base.
Yeah,
that they were then delivering to you every week.
Yeah, and what I didn't feel that way about myself, but I feel that way about guys right now in prison, because right now we have guys in prison that's been in prison 25 and 30 years, never shot anybody, never carried a gun. All they did was sold a lot of drugs and got a lot of time, and they're still there right now today.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the guns are down at the street level where dealers might get robbed or something. Up at the top, other than bodyguards, I mean, were there ever guns?
No, you didn't really need guns. The only time I would carry a gun if I went to a club or something like that and I think somebody might be going to kidnap me or try to do something to me. It was only self-defense. Never, I mean, you got more money than you can ever spend. What are you going to do with a gun? You know, guys who carry guns robbing people. That's because they're broke. When you got plenty of money, the only way you want a gun is to protect your money.
That's right. That's what good guns are for, is protecting your family and your money. I got my mind on my family, and I got my hand on my gun. We'll be right back with Freeway Ricky Ross. I'm Alex Jones, your host. You're getting the inside scoop live. Reuters reports U.S. states pot legalization not in line with international law. UN says we can't decriminalize marijuana. See how we're going under global government? Obama says he'll put carbon taxes in on us even if Congress doesn't agree. Said that in China. See how we're living under these foreign banks' control. Parties come and go, but this continues. Look at this. This came out a few months ago. CIA admits to destroying Gary Webb's career with the country's largest newspapers. We're going to talk about that next hour with our guest. We're going to get into a whole bunch of important news. Here's the latest story at Infowars.com. Russia announces deployment of bombers over the Gulf of Mexico as a new Cold War kicks off. Survey, Americans have smartened up to mass government spying and are totally against the NSA. D.C. school strips Christmas from calendar after Muslims complain. China jails CIA's imams. And we have a second video emerging of the Obamacare architect calling the American people stupid and admitting it's a ripoff. Continuing in the UN, causing all sorts of sterilization. They've been caught doing that. That's just some of the news up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Free Ricky Ross is our guest. He, of course, is played by a fictional, not a fictional character. He's played by an actor in an account of the real-life events that happened. It's almost like a documentary in Kill the Messenger, the hit movie out about the late Gary Webb. I want to hit this right now before we talk about what the CIA said to you, about your message to young people, about where you see the country and the world going. Then I want to open the phones up because they'll ask a lot of questions that I didn't think to ask. We're also going to send out a Twitter hashtag so folks can respond, just whatever they want to come up with, to ask questions of Rick Ross, who's in studio with us. But in the few minutes we have before break, Rick, we've talked a lot about this. He was coming out with a new book. He was talking to me. He wasn't ready to come back on until his new book came out. He wanted me to put an online bibliography up of a bunch of documents. He was talking to a bunch of other people. He was talking to you. I talked to you right after they killed him, or he committed suicide, as they say, in jail. You didn't buy it. He told you they'd been breaking in his house. He'd had to move. They'd threatened him. I liked how the movie basically implies they killed him, but it ends before they kill him. This story of him shooting himself twice in the head, what did Gary Webb talk to you before he died? I mean, he talked to me about how he was very excited. He had all the proof to back up what he said.
Yeah, he told me he was going to keep going, that he was going to get to the bottom of it, and that he wasn't going to stop until he was done with it. And he did tell me about a new book that he was working on, and he asked me if I would be a part of that as well. So, I mean, you know, I was talking to Kevin Booth when Kevin Booth is the one that told me about what happened to Gary, and I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. And right after when I spoke to you, you know, and that's when you asked me, you know, on air, was I thinking about committing suicide? And I was like, no, where did that come from? And I didn't really understand what you was doing until after I went back to my cell and I thought about it. What you were doing was making sure that everybody knew that I was thinking right, that I wasn't planning on killing myself, and that I was stable and whatnot. And
yeah, I'm never going to commit suicide. You're never going to commit suicide?
No, never.
So if you get shot twice in the head, you didn't do it?
I love absolutely. If I get shot once in the head.
Gary Webb, you think they killed him?
I mean, it looks like it to me. I mean, just I'm not a forensic or anything like that, so I really can't say if it's possible that somebody can shoot themselves in the head twice. But it just seems odd to me that a person could take a gun, and because I shot a gun before, and you shoot it and the gun does like this here. So then you take
Stay there. We're going to talk more about it back in 70 seconds. Man, I tell you, you ought to hear what we're discussing during the breaks. Rick Ross on the ground floor of the CIA crack cocaine epidemic. He wants to get into hip-hop and how it's a weapon. And, of course, a lot of insiders like Professor Griff and others have documented that. I've talked to famous people that I can't say their names, multiple major rock and roll stars who were in the meetings at MTV where they said, sorry, rock and roll's gone. We're bringing in the hip-hop, gangster rap, and we're weaponizing it. That's the word from the Chiefs. And, boy, they've done a job. So that's coming up in the next segment. Getting back to Gary Webb, when you went to the premiere, hung out with Renner, who also helped finance it, did a great job. Knowing the story as good as I do, I was really freaked out because it was so accurate. Obviously, they couldn't show everything, but it was so they really, I think, captured his spirit. I really admire Renner now.
I do too. And I met Renner at the screening. Me, him, and Michael, and the director, and the head producer. We all took photos and whatnot, and it was just like almost like Gary was there. You know what I'm saying? Gary's wife was there. His kids were there. So for me, it was an opportunity to meet people that I had never met before, but I spoke on the phone, and to meet his wife and his kids, and just the whole environment was like, man. Everything that Gary was doing was still alive, you know, to know that he hadn't died.
I wonder how his so-called friends at the newspaper that turned their back on him, I wonder how they feel now being so famous in this film.
Wow, yeah. You know, I spoke to Jesse Katz about his role, you know, inside the film. And, you know, we have Get Jesse inside of our documentary where he apologizes for basically being a hired gun. And gunning Gary down, he was saying that that's one of the lowest points that he feel in his journalism, that he did that.
Now, it was the editor of the L.A. Times that was CIA, though. And
it may have been, but yeah, he hired Jesse to.
No, I understand, but it actually comes out in the film because they're saying, well, the L.A. Times says this. And he goes, well, yeah, but he's CIA. and you know, and of course, he was never discredited. That's why they had to kill him, because they tried to kill him in the media. And then that didn't work, so they just killed him.
Well, you know, the internet saved the story. I mean, if it wasn't for the internet, the story would have been dead, you know, from the start. But the thing about it was so good is that it was the first time a major newspaper had ever released a story on the internet. So once it hit that internet, it just started going from
Yeah.
person to person to person to person. And another thing, it was the first time that blacks had ever really came out on the internet the way they did. They really came out and
Oh, let's talk about that when we come back, and then we'll get into the hip hop and your message to the young people. But we ought to find those clips like where Mike Rupert confronts the CIA director and Maxine Waters does. You can find it online, like Mike Rupert confronts CIA director, Maxine Waters does. And Deutsch just shuts down and then had to quit after that. I mean, people were mad. They're like, you put this on our streets? That was powerful.
Yeah. When he came down to South Central at Locke High School.
I want to get your take. We'll start talking about that some.
Well, he came to South Central because it was such an uproar in South Central LA. Blacks were mobilizing and they wanted something done. They wanted answers. People had kids in prison and it really devastated the black community. Right now we have 600,000 black men in prison for selling drugs. No violence, not rapes, not robberies, just drugs. Marijuana, cocaine. And these people wanted the answers. They want to know why were their kids taken away so long. I have about 11 friends that's been in prison right now, 26 years. From selling drugs, 20, maybe even 30, some of them. So people want answers. And Dutch felt that it would be better to address it than to let it keep simmering. And a big mistake he made, by coming to South Central and confronting those people because they really gave it to him.
We're going to play the clips of Mike Rupert and others. And I guess it was Maxine Waters visit you in your cell. Who was the congresswoman that was there at that
Juanita McDowell. Maxine Waters was there, too.
That's right. Okay, I'm going from memory here.
They both was there.
But they did find the clips. We'll play those when we come back, and we'll give the phone number out so you can have your questions and comments, and we'll take your Twitter questions at Real Alex Jones. Stay with us.
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
All right, you can watch an hour of that famous C-SPAN footage, and of course it made Deutsch resign a few weeks later, and then it caused an Inspector General report, and they admitted it. It all came out. That's the thing. People say, oh, government involvement in 9/11 would come out. It has. Government involvement sterilizing people would come out. It has. Government involvement shipping drugs in would come out. It has. It came out in the 60s on the opium, the heroin in Southeast Asia. It's come out in Afghanistan. It went from 7% of world opium production in Afghanistan to 93%. That's the UN's own report after our liberation of it. I don't need to play the Fox News clips again or CNN or ABC, them admitting our troops guard and grow the opium. Do you understand that, folks? And then if your son or daughter is dumb enough to get on heroin, God forbid, or unlucky enough, and they're going to throw them in jail when they shipped it in? That's crazy. That'd be like if you were a mafia don and ordered one of your guys to go rob a bank, and then the mafia don shows up in a police outfit and takes you to jail for robbing the bank when he publicly ordered him to do that. Freeway Ricky Ross is our guest. He would sell out Gary Webb and others, so they kept him in prison a lot longer than he should have been there. And again, I don't glorify drug dealing, but it's the fact that it's illegal that puts all this money into it. You regulate it. You make it a shameful thing to do. You don't have all these Hollywood movies promoting it on purpose to prime the pump, and it will go away. Areas of Europe have done that, and drug abuse has gone down about 50%. So it's because I don't like drugs. Folks, I don't use drugs. I get prescriptions sometimes, if I'm sick. I drink coffee. I drink tea. Occasionally I drink beer or wine. But, that's it. It's the drug dealers that are currently operating in government and big banks and then low-level ones. They don't want it to be made legal or decriminalized. Rick Ross is our guest. We're going to be taking your phone calls coming up. It's the Sunday phone number today. We're running the whole show out of our operation. 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. Callers for Rick Ross, 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. And we've got your Twitter questions coming in at hashtag Rick Ross. Just tweet at us with hashtag Rick Ross on the IW chats at Real Alex Jones on Twitter. We've already got some of those questions pouring in. Rick, other points you want to make, and then I know you want to get into hip-hop, that you say is the new crack cocaine epidemic culture war machine. And then I've got some amazing testimony I can give you on that exact fact, backing up what you have to say. Tell folks what you told me off air.
Well, I believe that what they've done is they've taken hip hop and they've made it glorious to be a drug dealer. You know, when I sold drugs, I hid. I didn't want anybody to know I sold drugs. But now they got these guys who've never sold drugs, technically. You know, one guy was a correctional officer who goes by the name of Rick Ross now. He took my whole identity, and the court said that he could do it, that he could prance around the country and say that he's me and take my whole life and use it, and there was nothing I could do about it. I can't stop him.
He even grew a beard just like you.
Everything. So now they take these guys, and these guys say, well, I got to the position that I'm in right now today by selling drugs. So the message that it tells our kids is that if you go out, you sell drugs, then you can become a great rock star like myself and never go to prison. And I think that that's a false message to be given people who feel hopeless.
And notice they don't indict the people that are fake and claim all that. No, they want them out there like a lanternfish has that light to get the little fish to swim over so they can eat them.
Exactly, and that's what I believe. I mean, if I were to go on tape and say, oh yeah, I sold 300 kilos of cocaine, and now you got me admitting that I did that, they would indict me for it. But the way they're doing it now, they're saying it's just art form. It's just a form of art, and I believe that it's sucking in our kids, and you know, you turn on the radio and it's just filled with it. And
what do you want to say to Rick Ross? Because he'll probably see this video.
Well,
the fake Rick Ross.
I would tell him that it's time to change, that it's time to tell the kids the truth, you know, and let them know that technically he's never sold drugs and that he didn't get his money from selling drugs, that Universal gave him the money to do the things that he's doing, that it's okay to admit that you never did that, and not let our kids believe that they can go out and sell drugs and never pay a penalty for doing that.
Does it make you angry to see him doing that?
Well, really, the whole culture. I mean, I'm disappointed in the whole culture. Really, not really him, because I don't think that he understands what he's doing. To him, I believe that he's making a living, and he's almost like I was when I sold drugs. So he don't understand the.
But you were actually doing it and taking the risk. He's out there selling this culture and this idea where young kids are going to go out and get their lives ruined or killed. In my book, that's a lot worse than what you did.
It possibly.
At least you had your butt hanging out there.
Yeah, and they're getting it to maybe even more people than I did. I mean, you know.
Well, notice though, even though these guys are fake gangsters, they're always getting shot up and killed because real gangsters come after them, or other people that think they're gangsters come after them. It's totally sick. It
is. But then, you know, you go to our schools and guess who you hear on the radio? Playing on in a high school gym on the turntables. Guess who you hear on there? Jay-Z.
Well, I'm glad you're speaking to high schools and colleges. We need to get you to just thousands of them. We need to shut this down.
Well, you know, it is, and you say that it's harder for me to get in with my message than it is for them. They'll pay these guys $100,000 to come there and tell the kids how much drugs they sold and how glorious it is to sell drugs, and they don't even want me on campus.
Because you're going to tell them, it's the government, it'll ruin your life, don't touch it. And by the way,
you're going to go to prison forever if you don't.
And it's that message that'll keep kids off drugs. Not the one of, oh, it's sexy and fun. You want to get involved in this. This is how you really start rolling and getting all the chicks and everything. No, you're not going to get any of that. You're going to end up getting TB in a prison cell.
Exactly. And get your lights cut off at 7 o'clock at night. Told when to get up in the morning, when to go to bed, and how to live your life.
It makes me sick.
And they're going to give you a job. Oh, you can't get a job on the street? Oh, well, they got a job for you in prison. It's called Unicor. And you're going to make money, prison money, 25 cents an hour. And the job that you're going to be doing, skillful job. Because people on the street, well, they get $35 an hour to do that same job. But we're only going to give you 25 cents. But that's all you need. Because we're going to feed you, house you, we wash your clothes for you. You have nothing to worry about in here.
And then the good old boys sit around going, I hear they got hot tubs and cable in them prisons. I say make them work. And then they wonder why their son or daughter can't get a job in a factory because the factories are all built on the side of the prisons.
Absolutely.
For 25 cents an hour.
Yep. And then they charge you. as much as 50 cents a minute for a phone call.
So you got to work 2 hours to talk to your wife or your girlfriend or your son or daughter for 2 minutes.
Yep. Absolutely. And then, visits, they only let you visit twice a week.
It is such an evil plan.
And then you may be like I was, where your family is in L.A. and they got you in Texarkana, Texas. So you may only see your family once a year, if you're lucky. If you're lucky.
You look like you're about to cry thinking about all those kids getting sucked in by those spiders run by Universal and all the rest of them. I mean, they're setting up webs to catch kids and put them in that prison.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When they got what they call now, I just spoke at a conference in San Francisco. They call it from Head Start to the prison pipeline. So they say they can tell right now. They got people that say they can tell right now a kid that's in kindergarten if he's going to prison.
Well, I read a report. It was in mainstream news in New Mexico about 2 years ago that the biggest prison corporation in the world was financing security at the school and was there admitting they're preparing those kids to go to prison. That the whole thing is just an induction pipeline right into the prison.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe it. I mean, how would people stand around and go for something like this here? I can't do it.
Well, there are people like Professor Griff and others that are exposing what's happening in hip-hop.
Yeah. I spoke to Professor Griff, and we're planning on doing some things together.
Yeah, he's a really great guy. Army veteran, really smart guy, trying to expose what's happening.
Well, the record labels are not going to touch those guys, though.
Even though they're the real pioneers of hip-hop.
Absolutely. But he can't get a record on the radio. Totally underground. It's going to be up to us, the people in the streets, like, what you're doing right now. I mean, mainstream won't touch me. They won't give me an interview. They won't talk to me. A drug dealer in my studio? Never.
Instead, you're the real Rick Ross saying don't use drugs. And they got the other Rick Ross running around making kids think it's sexy, and they want him in the schools. That's because the spiders want to get those kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Stay there. I want to come back, get into anything else you want to cover, and take phone calls, and I'll tell you my story about the inside. Your Twitter questions, your phone calls when we start the next segment. Rick had more he wanted to say about, quote, dumbing down. He was describing it like, well, I guess training wheels on the kids right into prison. Get more into that, Rick Ross. You were talking about hip-hop and how they program the kids on how they're supposed to act.
Well, like myself, Alex, they made me believe that I was dumb, that I couldn't read. And, people ask me all the time, who was it? Was it my mom who didn't teach me how to read? Was it the school? Well, I don't really know. But what I do know is that I had come up with a mentality about myself that I was dumb, that I was stupid, that all I should be was a thug. And that thugging was cool. And when I looked around from my prison cell and I started to look at all my friends, that they all thought the same way. And it was this programming that put us in this position that dealing drugs and gangbanging was easy for us to accept. And I believe that hip-hop is doing that right now, but on a more massive scale. The kids now, they wear their pants like we used to. They talk the things that we used to
They're
talk.
ready for prison.
Absolutely.
They're ready to be punked.
Absolutely. It's at an all-time high right
It
now.
must be a joke to the CIA mind controllers to have the young guys already wearing their pants saying, hey, I'm ready to be raped. I mean, they must be really proud of the masterful job they've done. And now they're deploying that hip hop culture into everything. It's taking over.
Oh, absolutely. Endorsements. I mean, big companies, companies that wouldn't touch that type of lifestyle before, is all over.
They don't want to have kids wearing sports jackets and doing well, and you've got a future and no, you're crap. And now the rock and roll music's, oh, we're all dead, we have no future, humans are crud. They need us to feel bad about ourselves, and that we're hurting the earth, so we roll over and basically become slaves.
Absolutely.
Other points you wanted to make before we go to break.
And that's the point that I believe right now that our kids are in, and that's why I'm out here on the streets working to let them know that I couldn't read, but I eventually started doing law. I found the issue that eventually helped me get out of prison. So, I wrote a book now. And
you're here warning people about drugs right now.
Absolutely.
And that's what matters is you've changed. You understand what you did wrong. And that's more valuable than somebody that never even went through the trials and tribulations. You're a veteran of this tyranny, and you're here seeing through the matrix now. That's a beautiful thing. It's like Christ is on the cross, and he's there next to the thief and everything, and the thief apologizes, accepts it. His heart's right, and Christ says, tonight you'll be with me in paradise. But the soldiers and everybody, they just went along with it.
Yeah.
They think they're winners in this world, and they're not.
Absolutely.
Well, we've got to warn the young people to never use drugs the first time. I mean, marijuana is a gateway, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't decriminalize it just so they can't throw you in jail. But the whole drug culture is ruining people, and the prescription drugs are pushing on kids in the schools are worse than the illegal drugs. And just stay away from them and realize you're not empty if you get bad grades. And then, so you got to go to the dark side. You're not empty just because you don't have a bunch of money. You can paint, you can do music, you can go out and help people. That's what's going to empower you is going out and standing up to bullies, not just feeling bad because you don't live like people on television.
Yeah, we all can't be on television. It's crazy that they tell us that, if you don't have a pair of Air Jordans, that you're not special.
Well, I mean, I was happier before I had all this responsibility and was, quote, on radio and TV and barely had money to buy 3 pairs of shoes a year, even though that was rich compared to poor people. I mean, I was totally happy. I was thinking back to the years when I was, out of high school and stuff, and parents were giving me no help because I didn't ask for it, really, and I was so poor. It was the happiest time of my life without all these responsibilities and the rest of it. And I'm not saying people shouldn't become successful. It's just that what matters is that you're a good person. That's the real value.
It is. And that you care about others. Because when you don't care about other people, then I believe that you're the worst. And a lot of people that's in power right now, they don't care about anything but your dollars.
In fact, they enjoy hurting people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a diabolical plan to ship heroin in to get millions of Americans addicted from the 50s on, and then to bring in cocaine, weaponize it as crack, which is a CIA recipe that was declassified, and to deploy it right into black neighborhoods. I mean, that's a nasty thing to do.
It is, absolutely. To a people that doesn't have, that's hopeless.
And then to sell them thug culture, because let me tell you, I'm downtown Austin, and there's, basically, I call them black Klan members, whatever, just black thug culture. There's white thug culture as well, but they've been sold it's okay to hate white people. I mean, but I see the plan, though. I see the whole programming to make them like that and to make them hate me, and then I realize how it's all to divide everybody so the system can manage us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's diabolical.
Absolutely.
That is sick. That is mind control. So we've got to transcend it, ladies and gentlemen, and defeat it. We'll get your take on what I just said when we come back, Rick Ross, and go right to your phone calls and your Twitter questions. I'll stop hogging him right now. His website is IamTheRealRickRoss.com. Rick Ross is our guest. We're going to go to your phone calls here in just a moment. There was one other point we got talking about fluoride in the water. What was the other point you wanted to make, you were saying?
I lost my thought, man.
We're having the real discussions here during the breaks. I've thought so many times for the TV audience, I ought to have a button I can hit whenever I'm not eating or making a phone call where we can put live cams in here during the breaks.
Yeah,
that's where the really good discussions are happening.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. But we done touched on so many good points, man, and I'm just excited, that you had me here and that we touching on some of these points. One of them too. Obama, he wrote in the 18-1 crack law, where it was 100-1 for crack and powder, where it already been proven that powder and crack are identical drugs, except one is smokable and one is not smokable. So about a year ago, they changed it 18-1, but they should have made it 18-1, and then they should have made it retroactive. Say if a guy's been in jail 25 or 30 years, but if it was 18-1, he would only got 5 years in prison. So they would owe him some time. He would be released.
Well, I totally agree. If you're non-violent, you should be released, period, because the government shipped it in to begin with. It'd be like if your judge was the guy that sold you the cocaine, and then now he's presiding over sending you to jail for life. That's what it is. It'd be like if Hitler ran the Nuremberg trials. I mean, it's pure bull. I mean, end it.
It is. And then they own the prisons.
I remember... I've talked to 2 major rock stars, and it's not the 2 that you've heard on the show. I've talked to 2 major rock stars, and then I've talked to some hip-hop folks. They all say that they've heard the same stories, and some of the memos have come out about the CIA behind rock and roll to create the revolutions, behind bringing the LSD in. That's been declassified. But in the early 90s, they said, look, rock's going to be dead. Get ready. We're going to bring in hip-hop, and we're going to gangsterize it. This is from the guys upstairs. The government wants this. Sumner Redstone at Viacom has been ordered to do this. And big managers and people were all brought in, and they said, you better start flipping to this. That's why you saw a lot of heavy metal guys start doing rap albums and, getting other folks in with them and things, because they were told, we're going to play these on the record. We're going to put this on the air. And then I talked about my personal self. I experimented here and there once or twice with hard drugs. Always had such horrible hangovers that methamphetamine a couple times, cocaine a few times. I'm on record about that. I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
I've always been a nicotine alcohol type guy, and that I've transcended pretty much as well. Don't even smoke cigars anymore because I always get back on cigarettes when I do. But long story short, Sheriff McWhorter, who later got busted, he was flying drugs into the Rockwall Airport. We lived in the richest county in Texas, right outside Dallas, Rockwall on the Lake. And I would be at affluent people's houses for a party when their parents are out of town. The cheerleader down the street's having a party. All the 14-year-olds are over there. And then there'd be 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds that come over, wild parties, pool parties. And the police car would pull up. And then they'd come in and go, we got the weed, we got the ecstasy, we got the methamphetamine, we got the... And I'd be like, whoa. And because they had money. And so many times the cops in cars would deliver the drugs. So I'd get pulled over a couple of years later when I was driving. This is why we had to move to Austin. I've told this has been in Esquire. It's been in Texas Monthly. They didn't believe a lot of it. Went and checked and went, wow, there were a bunch of busts in the Rockwall PD and the county and flying in cocaine.
I remember that. It was in the newspapers, and I read it.
So they were flooding it with drugs, and they would want to search my car, and I'd go, man, I saw you 2 years ago deliver drugs. And they would beat me up, take me to jail, threaten to hang me, told my dad's lawyer, move out or we're going to kill him, basically.
Yeah.
And a couple of years, we moved out, and then later the feds came in and busted them. But again, that's the big drug dealer busting the little drug dealer.
Yeah, well, that's why they don't like you, Alex, because you're gonna keep it 100. You're going to let them know exactly what's going on.
Well, I wasn't saying anything about the cops stealing drugs till they wanted to search me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you're a drug dealer. Leave my 6-pack of beer alone. Oh, look, like under the truck seat, those Silverados had the seat that lifted up in the middle.
Yeah.
And there was the 6-pack. We weren't even drinking and driving. We were going to a party. And they're like, all right, I got you, minor in possession. I was just like, you're a drug dealer. And they
almost like the fox watching the hen house, huh?
Well, yeah, it's like, you're a drug dealer? You're going to give me a ticket, take my beer? Those cops would just go, ugh! They arrested me 3 times doing that.
Wow.
They would beat me up that bad. They'd slam my head in the wall, and they'd take me there and go, listen.
They didn't beat you with a flashlight?
No, you've been beat up before.
I've been beat with a flashlight while I was handcuffed, and let the dog bite me while I was handcuffed. I mean, these guys are wow with these, what do you call them, cowboys?
Yeah.
These drug enforcement agents, they're just out there, man.
Most of them are dealers.
Yeah, running rampant and ripping off the public because they're not solving the problem.
Well, now they're so arrogant, even the New York Times reports on it, they're taking people's cash out of their wallets that have no criminal record, no drugs. They just go, oh, $2,000 in your wallet? Bam, I'm taking it.
Well, Gary stopped that too. You remember they used to have a forfeiture. Remember the forfeiture law?
He got it kicked out of the states, yeah.
He made them change their forfeiture laws. Before they could pull you over and say they found a joint in your car, and they could take your car and forfeit it. When you go to court and the court throw your case out and you never go to jail or never found guilty.
He did get it reformed, but now they came back where the feds federalize it and they do it now through the police. But Gary did do so much. Let's go to these calls here. Folks, get his book. It's available right now at InfoWarsStore.com, or you can go to FreewayRick.com or IamTheRealRickRoss.com and get the book, Rick Ross, The Untold Autobiography, and give it to the young people in your life, especially any that are getting on drugs. Donnie McClure asked the question on Twitter, can you elaborate on the rapper Rick Ross and how he stole your image? I think you already answered that. And do you like his music? Do you like his music?
I do. You can't help it. I mean, they have a formula that they're doing with this music. And our heart beats off of a rhythm. So
they manipulate us, yeah.
Absolutely. So, and then you hear the music, if you turn on the radio, and I don't really listen to the radio and I like it, because you can't help but hear this music everywhere you go. You're in the elevator, you hear it. You're in the supermarket, you ride down the street and somebody else is playing in the car.
Well, that's what makes me mad is my kids can't help but like it.
Absolutely.
And if the message was good, it'd be great, but it's weaponized. The message is bad.
Yeah, it's not motivation, uplifting, telling that you can be somebody special and that you are special no matter what situation.
No, it's like you got to be a gangster, slinging the rock, the hose,
You got it.
Yeah. Rick Ross, did you do any business with the CIA? Well, that's a silly question.
Not knowingly.
Yeah, they had an intermediary between you and them.
Yeah. Danilo Blandon, the CIA operative. That's what they call it. He's not an agent, but he's an operative.
It's a membrane. Do you know Henry Hill was or ever met Henry Hill? And if so, how much of a piece of bleep was he? I don't even know who that is.
No, me either. Never heard of him.
All right. We've got more Twitter questions coming in. We're going to go to calls. MKT says, what was your first major purchase after making all your drug money?
My first major purchase, I bought a piece of property that I built a motel on.
That's smart. Adam Russell asked on iChats, Rick, do you think the government was involved in creating the fake rapper's persona to basically troll you? I mean, sure, I don't think Rick Ross came up with that.
I don't know if they did it to, I don't know what troll me mean, but what I know that happened is they gave him authenticity, where it was.
They said he was authentic.
Yeah, where in my community, I'm a legend. People's mothers and fathers had talked about me, so it had already been ingrained in people that Rick Ross was something. And so when the name came out, people automatically liked that name because they looked at me as almost like a Robin Hood.
Well, Rick Ross rolls off the tongue. It sounds cool.
Yeah. So when they did him, he already had love for the community. The community already had love for him. I don't know if you know who Freddie Fox is, but Freddie Fox told me one time, he was like, man, when I heard that Rick Ross was performing in New York, I went to the show. And when I got to the show, I see this guy, and I was like, that ain't none of my man. So they already had a love for Rick Ross. And what he did is he got that love that the streets had for me, because I was a gangster. I was out there in the streets, and that's what they wanted. And he fitted that role. So,
what are some of the things that motivate you today? KDEE asked.
Well, redemption, to redeem myself, to show young people that no matter where you at today, that you can always improve yourself and become a better person.
How do you pronounce that caller's name? Vladislav? Vladislav? I think we're going to go to Vladislav here in just a moment. In fact, let's go to Vladislav now in Washington. You're on the air with the real Rick Ross.
Hello, Rick. My name is Vladislav here in Battleground, Washington. My question is very basic to you. Basically, what motivated you to deal the drugs with the CIA? And afterwards, what changed your mind?
But has anybody been listening? He didn't know he was dealing drugs for the CIA until it came out in court because the operative that his was a supplier from the Air Force Base hadn't told him that. So I don't mean to answer his question for you, but I mean, what motivated you to deal drugs? I think you said that. Money, right?
Poverty, money. Yeah, I was tired of my mom struggling and not having food in the refrigerator. There's been days that me and my brothers and sisters woke up and there was nothing in there to eat.
I've got a question to ask you. Thank you, caller. I appreciate I'm not trying to be mean. He just answered that. What does your mother think, kind of like that Scarface story, what did your mother think when suddenly you had all this money?
Well, my mom put me out of the house when she first found out I was dealing drugs. My mom was a diehard Christian. And, first thing came to her mind, oh, you're going to hell forever. So she threw me out the house. But when she did, I was already ghetto rich. I had $100,000. So everybody in the neighborhood wanted me to come to their house and stay. But eventually, she started to succumb to the money. I bought pulpits for the church and air conditioners, and I remodeled her house where she didn't have holes in the floors and had it exterminated. Put the tent over to get rid of the rats and the roaches, and I was still her son. So no matter what happened, she still loved me and adored me. So our relationship never changed.
That's right. There's nothing more powerful than the flesh of my flesh. Let's go to Julio in Wyoming. Julio, welcome to the airwaves with Rick Ross.
What up, Julio?
Hey, what's going on, Rick Ross? I first learned about you in college when I was a sophomore, when I first heard about Alex Jones. And I want to say God bless you for what you're doing and speaking out against the drug culture. Studying media in college, it's clear we have this predictive program society. A quick story I want to share, just living in Wyoming for a couple months. I've interacted with someone who I work with at my radio station. His brother-in-law, he works for a pharmaceutical company, and he legally, I used air quotes on that, legally purchases methamphetamines and cocaine for the big drug manufacturers. And they go all over the country to pick up legal purchases. But I completely agree with what you and Alex are talking about with predictive programming. There was a movie that came out, a couple of years ago, Two Guns, with Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg. And again, they kind of just threw it in our face.
They just admit the CIA's bringing the drugs in. It's all just
they admit
flapping it in our
CIA,
face.
They admit the Army, the Air Force, they're all doing this. My question to you, Rick Ross, is what's one of the biggest keys for us to talk to the youth about drugs? Here in Wyoming, the Native American culture, they're in a huge rat hole because of methamphetamine use. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is basically the FBI for Native Americans, they're the ones who are helping push methamphetamine use here. So how do we talk to the people? How do we even engage the police officers? Schaumburg, Illinois, a big suburb of Chicago, recently they've been caught dealing drugs themselves and stealing it from drug dealers and pushing it on the culture.
Well, that's it. And look, they have to stop. They got rid of alcohol prohibition. Now they brought in this new prohibition, and now they want to grab our kids. And it's just there's never enough. And they laugh on TV and passed Obamacare. That's a giant screw job. I mean, this thing is out of control. They're killing the golden goose. Rick Ross, how do we stop the drug war?
I think what you're doing right now, Alex, is a start. This is how you got to get started. Because, you're talking about fighting the 1,000-pound gorilla. And you're not going to whoop him, just going head up with him. And you got to sit down and think and talk like Alex is doing right now. And, most people don't even want to talk about these issues.
That's right. You got to force it out there till everybody knows. And it's starting to happen.
Yeah, and once you start to do that, then you can start attacking it because when people are dumb, and remember how I was dumb, illiterate, I never read a book, never heard of Alex Jones or nothing. I didn't know anything. So anything that somebody brought to me, I went for it. They bring it to you. Oh, this is for you. It's good for you. Take it and use it. And this is how you do it. And then you find yourself caught up in stuff that you never thought you could have been.
Well, see, my dad and mom were big into history, and so my dad would tell me when I was young, no, the government brings in the drugs. Here's the Big News Brzezinski's book where he admits it, and when you're old enough, read it. And I mean, and I just thought everybody knew this stuff, and then there were the police dealing drugs, just like my dad said, and then I've had Serpico on. What do you think about his story? They police shot him in the face.
Yeah, I mean,
because he didn't want to deal drugs.
I mean,
he said the entire New York narcotics department then were all dealing drugs.
Wow.
I said, what percentage? He said 100%.
Wow.
Everyone he knew. And then he was even letting them deal the drugs. He just said, and they still tried to kill him.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Thank you, Julio. Let's go to another caller here. Jacob in Missouri. Go ahead. You're on the air with Rick Ross.
Yeah, how you guys doing? I just got a quick question for each one of you. If you can just bear with me real quick. I don't use this word at all, but this is an epic interview. This, just like a workout interview right here. But real quick, Mr. Ross, I literally did a fist pump when I heard you say that you're getting ready to do something with Professor Griff. I have 4 brothers. A couple of us, we're so much alike we don't get along. A couple of us, we don't see eye to eye on everything. But we have to drop our differences. I mean, what comes next is my question to you, and then I have a question for Alex too. What's next? Can you just get with people like Immoral Technique, KRS-One, and just combine? Like, everybody needs to organize and get together.
Well, I agree, but Professor Griffiths wanted to work with me, but I've gotten too busy. We need to get in the system's face. And because they want to control music and say, we know you're doing it. Here's the master plan. Here's how you laid it out. And people don't put up with these gangbangers anymore. They're nothing but soldiers of the New World Order to destroy our communities. people need to laugh at these gangbangers, not make them heroes. That's my point. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you that we definitely got to do that, hit them right in the face. And like I said before, what Alex is doing right now, you know, most people won't even talk to me. They don't want to sit down and debate with me what happened in my life and what I went through. What they want to do is just say, oh, you're no good two-bit drug dealer. You should have stayed in prison for the rest of your life. You know, you shouldn't even be out of prison. They don't want to look at the facts, you know, why I didn't learn how to read till I was 28 years old. Why was the school pushing me through? And these are the issues that need to be dealt with. You know, why are there 600,000 black men, just black men? And why this country has 2.2 million people in prison right now, and I think like 50-something million on paper.
It's unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment. We may do some overdrive with the real Rick Ross. I'm Alex Jones. Here's a question that I want to get to. Have you ever reached out to big artists about deglorifying drug dealing, i.e. Jay-Z, etc.? And if so, what was their reaction?
Well, I tried to reach out to everybody in hip-hop about us coming together and changing this culture and so forth. Nobody would touch me. Did have a meeting with Dr. Dre and brought up the subject, and I was cut off.
Really?
Yeah. So right now I'm out on my own. You know.
So the man, I mean, people know you talk about this, you push this poison culture, or the big boys aren't going to put you on the radio.
Oh, absolutely not. They're not going to touch you. You start doing the things that I'm doing, you know, I have to sell my T-shirts, and I bought you one of my shirts, too.
Thank you, sir.
I have to sell my T-shirts and my books to pay my way around the country.
Good-looking shirt. Let me ask you a question. How do folks book you to come speak to their college, or their church, or their high school?
They can get me on Instagram or Twitter or my website, rickrossbooks.com, Freeway Rick website, and they can book me there.
I'm going to wear this shirt. I hope it's an extra large. It is.
It's an extra large.
Oh, they told you I was big. Okay, the real Rick Ross is not a rapper. I tell you, I'm going to wear this shirt.
And it's a nice shirt too. You feel the quality?
I love that fabric.
Yeah, I use some nice cotton because I know we like nice things. So I hooked it up, and I think it's important that we send a message to all these guys. You know, everybody who's promoting this drug culture.
I like the fact that Mark Dice, one of our contributors, he really goes after Rick Ross.
I love Mark.
He's awesome. So you know who he is. Good.
Yeah, I know who Mark is. Mark is wonderful. You know, he hits me up on Twitter and Instagram, and we talk about the whole 9 yards. And he went in on the rapper for what he did, you know, and what he's doing. And I think more people should. You know, we should not only go.
He stole your identity to sell kids on going to prison. That's got to make you mad.
Yeah, it should. Should make everybody mad. And not only mad at him, but mad at the radio stations, mad at the Universal and Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I don't think adults know what's in this music. Let me ask you another question here. I know it's a lofty task, says Brandon Bula, but will we ever see Gary Webb's third book, the person says second, but would have been his third book, put out by InfoWars, The Real Rick Ross? Yeah, I tried to reach out to the family, but they were so scared they never talked to me after they killed him. Whatever happened to that book?
I don't know. I mean, you know, I was still in prison when all that happened,
Maybe you're the guy to reach out to the family. Have you talked to him since the movie premiere?
Not since then. I spoke to the wife at a link. You know, we talked for about 15 minutes because it's the first time that we had time to sit and talk outside of prison. When I was in prison, I spoke to her on the phone. So maybe I should. I got her phone number now. So maybe I'll reach out to her and ask her if we can get those notes.
Well, he had a whole book written, and he sent me a disc, but it got lost and everything.
Would you be willing to help do that?
Listen, the last time I talked to Gary, I was busy. I said, man, everybody knows the government deals drugs. I've had you on the show. I want to get you on again. He's like, no, not till my book's out. And then he called back a month later. He goes, listen, I gave you all those documents. Put them up on the site. You know, I need somebody to put this stuff on an internet site. And I was like, okay, but, and then he was like, he didn't really cuss a lot. He's like, damn it, when you're ready to do something about this, you give me a call. Bang. And
I'm sure somebody probably got those notes now, though. I'd be surprised if his wife still has that stuff.
But he was passionate. I mean, he was telling me, you need to get up.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, Gary was willing to. I mean, Gary told me before that people have died for going down this road. You know, I mean, he's like, hey, Rick, when you go down this street here, you know, like I know going down the drug street selling drugs, you could get killed. Well, Gary told me that there's been people that went down the same road that he was going down that gotten killed. He told me that.
Yeah, people like Gary Webb are true modern-day heroes, and so are you. You are redeemed. I know that. I can feel it in my heart. We're going to come back with some overdrive and calls. It's a real Rick Ross, freewayrick.com. Well, I wish I could go for 3 more hours. This is a powerful interview. We're going to do a taped interview for the Nightly News. It'll air down the road. We're going to go through some more of your Twitter questions that are still coming in. Maybe we'll air tonight, but I don't want to put it all out at once. I'm going to dole it out. We're going to follow him up to this high school where he's going to be speaking and get some footage of that. So that should be powerful. Right now, Steve in Florida, you're on the air with the real Rick Ross. Go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, Alex and Ricky. Hey, what I wanted to ask Ricky is this: in all your travels and contacts and such through everything you've been through, and if he's not, Alex, you could probably enlighten him on this. Are you aware of the bigger picture as far as Operation Paperclip and the whole eugenics agenda, the pharmaceutical industry founding, and how Margaret Sanger wanted to eradicate the
Sure.
weed?
Are you aware that the Nazi plan actually came from the U.S. and England? And so that's why so much of this is going on, the secret testing, the drugs, is that it's an attack?
No, I didn't know that. I'm totally.
Well, I'll give you a film called Endgame that I produced that just goes over their whole master plan. The truth is we're living in a science fiction movie. Good to hear from you, Stephen. Let's talk to James in Michigan. You're on the air with Rick Ross.
Hey, Rick, I was just wondering, I have a question for you. I want to preface by saying, the mafia, they would tell their members not to deal in that junk, but they themselves, through the French connection of one instance, were dealing it themselves. My question to you is, had you ever been shaken down by the mob for making as much money as you did? Because they always want a cut.
And no, I wasn't.
That's because they obviously knew that you were a CIA conduit. the little mob doesn't mess with the real mob.
No, they don't.
I mean, I shouldn't speak for you. Why do you think they left you alone?
Well, it's obviously I had ties that was too big, even for them, and I probably got rich so fast that if you wasn't inside, you really didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. All these fake rappers say run around and show your wealth off. You're going to get arrested in 10 minutes acting like that.
Yeah.
I mean, real drug dealers, folks, real mob chiefs and people are living in small houses and gated communities, keeping their head down.
Yeah, nobody, if you didn't know me, you didn't know I was rich. I mean, my family, they started to know that, and they didn't know how rich I was. They knew I was wealthy, that when they called me for rent money and repossession money to get their car back, that I could do that. But they didn't know that I was making, $3 million a day and how much drugs I was selling. They didn't understand that. So the general public didn't know. Blandon knew, but everybody else didn't really know. So,
and I love how they came back to burn you later just to tie up loose ends.
That was really crazy to me, how they would take the guy that was supplying all the drugs, Michael said it in the movie. I mean, it was one of the parts that I really liked about my character is that Danilo was Santa Claus and I was an elf.
Exactly. Exactly.
So.
Oh, boy. Thank you, caller. Great question. Mike in Texas, go ahead.
Hey, you're probably hear from my Yankee accent. I'm from the Northeast, but I actually left that area about 5 years ago to come down here to get away from a lot of the drug culture. So for everybody who's listening to this, if you think that this is everybody who is of Caucasian descent, if you're listening to this and you think this is just a black issue, and I don't have to worry about this because this is just, some African American and his past problems. No, this is in your neighborhood. I grew up in one of the wealthiest communities in New Jersey.
This is too powerful. We're going to do more overdrive. Network, can you do that? One more segment? We're going to do one more segment, and then I'm going to have you come back. We're going to, I don't want to work you too hard. You ready to do 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes?
Yeah, we'll do 10 more minutes.
All right, I'm going to let you get some lunch here. I know you hadn't eaten since breakfast. Stay there, caller. I'm going to come back to Mike in Texas. Listen, one reason I didn't like the cops dealing the drugs where I grew up was that I had beautiful girlfriends that got on drugs and got ruined. I had buddies I played football with, that were, super handsome, great friends, had great lives, preacher's sons, you name it, lives ruined on drugs. And they were as white as Santa Claus's butt. We'll be right back. By the way, Rick Ross will be speaking at Brave New Books tonight down on Guadalupe Street.
Brave is collective status.
Oh, collective status. See, I was misunderstanding earlier. That's when I said Brave New. Okay, where are you going to be speaking tonight?
I'll be at Creative Status, 516 East 6th Street, Austin, Texas.
Okay, great. And what time is that going to be? Like 7 to 8:30 or so?
Yeah, well, 6. I'm gonna get there at 6. I'll get there at 6 to 8:30.
Well, that's fantastic. And again, plug it one more time.
It's Creative Status, 516 East 6th Street, Austin, Texas.
All right, creative status tonight. And that should be interesting. Hell, I'll send a film crew down there with you. That's awesome.
Yeah, let's do that. Send a crew down there, and we film it and everything.
Fantastic. He's here in studio with us. We're doing Overdrive so that you get a chance to talk to him. Mike, Mark, Dean. We've got some more Twitter questions. His website is IamTheRealRickRoss.com, FreewayRick.com. And let's go ahead now and go back to Mike. Mike, tell your story about moving down here to get away from the drug culture. I've got friends from like upstate New York that moved down here a decade ago. They said they moved down here as well because upstate New York, all the farmers and stuff are basically dead. And now it's just empty shopping malls and everybody's on drugs, basically. Is that what you're talking about?
It is, yeah. And it's funny you say that, Alex. I was going to mention a good friend of mine that moved here from Kentucky. You know, we're in the telecom industry, but his whole family were farmers, and they can't raise farmers or coal miners. They can't make a living anymore because of all of the so-called, green laws that have been put in. And now everybody's, a meth dealer there or grows pot. The sick thing about my situation is I have in-laws, actually ex-in-laws, who were in the police department in New York City. And they were at a very high level and always worked with drug enforcement agents whenever big busts were going to take place. Well, all of these guys that were, my family members, in-laws, who were in the police department had these beautiful, like mansion-style houses. And I would say, to my wife, my ex-wife now, I would say, I know what your brother makes, and there's no way that he can live that way. And she said, well, they make overtime, and so after years and years, I mean, I'm 50 now. This started when I was in my 30s. I would say, look, there's absolutely no way that this guy can pull down the kind of money he's making on a salary, even with overtime. There's something wrong. Well, we had cousins from my family die from drug overdoses, and I would openly say at family parties and holidays to this guy, I would say, the main kingpin in the family, how do you look at yourself knowing that you work with these people that bring this stuff into the country? And it's not just in the poor black neighborhoods.
Oh, it's the rich neighborhoods, black or white or Hispanic. Oh, it's worse there because people got money. That's where the drug dealing's going on. I know.
The cops never raid those houses. Now that's the problem, is that in those houses they don't get search warrants so easy. But in the black community, they can go into a judge and say, "Hey, I saw this guy selling drugs, and I saw this happening," and then the cops just come in and raid your house. But everybody knows that.
Listen.
Whites use more drugs than blacks.
I know people that work at the fanciest hotel in Austin. I'll just leave it at that. The one with the president stays. In fact, I shouldn't even get into this because the point is that they'll catch people with drugs and the cops throw it in the trash can because that place doesn't want to have a rep. I mean, that's how controlled stuff is.
Yeah.
And the Austin Police Department's one of the better ones in the country. I mean, they're not involved in a lot of corruption compared to other departments that we've looked at because I've really looked into it.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, the rich areas just get left alone, basically.
Oh, absolutely. And don't go to prison. Now, we're not saying that it's not in the white communities, because it absolutely is. But the blacks, when it comes to prison time and in the court system, that's who you're going to see in court.
Well, I've seen the statistic. I think a black person for drug crimes on average gets 5 times the sentence.
Yeah, they do. It's exact same crime. You can have the same
What are those
background.
judges thinking? I mean, they must be really racist.
I mean, when somebody comes in there that don't look like you, and remember, with this hip-hop culture, black men have been criminalized. I mean, when you see a black guy, first thing you do is hit the lock on your door. This is thug.
Well, black folks say they do that.
Absolutely. Because this has been planted in everybody's mind that we're criminals. I mean, look at all our heroes. Jay-Z, Rick Ross, 50 Cent. All of these guys are talking about the criminal culture.
And Dr. Dre, you got a meeting with him. You said you got cut off. What happened?
Well, I started to talk to him about what was happening in Compton and that we need to do some things in Compton that would uplift our community. You know, that there's no job development centers in Compton, that nobody is helping these people know that you can make it other ways. Like these kids believe that Dr. Dre was a thug. Dr. Dre is not a thug. He wasn't around when I was coming up. So our kids don't understand that. They don't understand that he used turntables to get rich. They think that he sold drugs and then took that money and turned it into music, and that's not what happened.
And what did he say? How did he cut you off?
He told me he didn't know that this stuff was happening out there. And I was like, how could you not?
So he just denies it when he knows full well it's that persona that's selling the records.
Absolutely.
And that he could use that now and go in and tell them a good message, and he doesn't want to do that.
No.
Because he wouldn't sound hard and cool and, be in all these Dr. Pepper commercials or whatever if he wasn't up there going, I'm hard and I'm this and that. I'm Dr. Dre.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that
Hell, Chrysler wouldn't let him have the Dre system in the 300s.
if he wasn't a gangster.
If he wasn't hard. Let me tell you what's hard is fighting the New World Order. What's hard is getting people not to abort their babies. What's hard is telling the truth and going up against the system, not acting like you're a thug. Makes me sick.
And going along with the system.
Yeah.
A real thug wouldn't go with the system.
Makes me want to throw up, I tell you right now. Mike, great story. Thanks for sharing it. Yeah, I just hate drugs. Well, listen, Rob Dew was in a store. I think it was Rob Dew told me about it. I saw the report they did. And they have who's the meth dealer, Breaking Bad, #1 show for a while.
Yeah,
I never really watched it. And they had he's a meth dealer toy for kids, and he has meth in his suitcase. So the kids go and buy it, and then, they go out and imagine they're a meth dealer.
Wow. I heard about the show, but I wouldn't watch it. I'm like...
I wouldn't either because I knew, and of course, it made meth get even more popular.
Absolutely. They show a guy that breaks bad and everybody accepts it. And he gets... I think that show got so many awards that it was crazy. But that's the same thing that happened with me with Superfly. I see a guy that just like me, who's down on his luck and things are not going well for him, and cocaine makes everything right for him.
Unbelievable. That lunch here in just a minute. We're almost over. Mark in Texas, got to move quick. Former cop. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's an honor speaking to both of you guys. I just think I was a correctional officer at DDPJ, and I'll tell you this. I found there was, among a lot of the inmates, there was more honor than among the officers, either officers in the street or officers in the prison. I understand now as far as the CIA goes why JFK said he wanted to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces, and this probably would cost him his life too. I saw that movie with Kill the Messenger, and it almost made me cry, man. I have to keep from crying, knowing that it's going on. It's my government, that the government we pay our taxes to is actually carrying these things out. And I heard about this when I was back in the 80s. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't believe it. I didn't think something this evil could be going on, but unfortunately it is. And it's up to us to get together, and it has nothing to do with black, white,
Exactly.
Spanish, brown. It's just that it's us versus them. The good people against a small percentage of evil that has hijacked our government.
We got to explain to young people, when the kids tell you use drugs and it's cool, you got to understand it's all a trap to legalize slavery and put you in a hole. Don't use illegal drugs ever.
For no reason.
Winning is staying out of the system. And the government is so criminal now. Hey, if you don't do it, make your own decision. You don't want to pay taxes. You want to be successful. You want to do stuff, whatever. That's your issue. It is time to withdraw our support from the system. I'm not advising folks to do that. Just do what you got to do. But there are ways to really be counter to this evil culture where you can actually be a rebel. Don't be the fake rebel they tell you to be, is what I'm getting at.
Right. The false rebel. Well, you think you're a rebel, but you're really playing right into the system.
Exactly. The system's telling you to be this false rebel, wear a hip-hop uniform, so the cops have been trained to go after you.
Yeah. You're almost turning yourself in. When I look back at it, I almost turned myself into a slave. That's what I did. Turn myself into a slave.
Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. Thank you, Mark. Last caller, got about a minute. Dean in Colorado, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted to ask Rick if he had thought about following
Rick Ross across the country when he's having concert dates
a great
and set
idea.
up outside the venues.
We could make a documentary about you, or somebody could do it where we follow you around where you're trying to get your identity back. And I'm telling you, it'd be a huge hit. I want to do that.
Okay, let's do it. Well, you know, my main thing has just been finances, you know, just trying to...
We can do it, but I'd want to hire a cinnamon talk. We got a great crew here, but I'm telling you, a movie like that, Rick, like trying to get your identity back from a guy that stole your identity,
right,
and say you couldn't get it in court, so now you're going to...
Go to the streets? Oh, that would be dope. I'm with it. Let's do it.
I just thought of the name. I'm not going to say it on air.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Oh, Dean, that's a great last caller. That was meant to happen.
Thank you, Dean.
Here's my problem. I get these ideas all the time. They're always successful. Problem is I got to do it, though.
Okay.
And the problem is I try to do too much, too many irons in the fire. But, hey, let's get you some lunch. Let's do another interview. And then you're going to speak to some high schoolers tomorrow, and you're going to come back. Maybe Friday, come back down. We'll hang out.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. I enjoyed the show.
All right. You got
Austin, Texas.
You bet. The Real Rick Ross. I am the Real RickRoss.com. Stay with us. In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force from InfoWars Life.